Yes! So excited to be here. Well, I'm just glad to be back. Welcome back to the New Dad Rock.
We're glad you came.
New Dad Rock?
We're glad you came back.
But I'm not a dad. How did I get here?
Speaking of coming back, is that a familiar face that I see?
Wait, who would that be?
Are you serious, dude? It's like there's another person on the line, and I think it's.
I can't believe it.
I think I've returned.
It sounds like it.
Well, I for one am glad you returned because
who
a couple
even is
weeks
that?
ago when you came here and talked about electronic music, you just kind of blew all of our minds. So I thought we'd come back, have you come back.
Eugene, tell us who you are.
Hello, my name is AJ Eugene, and I think I mentioned this a couple jumps back, but I'm a fiction writer and a recovering electronic musician.
All right. Welcome back.
So Eugene, the last time you were here, we were talking a lot about electronic music, industrial, and then some DJs. But what is the music that you're listening to now? Like, what kind of music do you listen to now? What are the current artists, and just what do you hear?
Fantastic. This is a funny question because for a graying electronic musician, I don't actually have top 3 electronic artists at this point. I'm super boring now. At the point in my life, I actually listen to mostly soundtrack artists, but over the past year or so, I did discover some really trippy music. So this song came up on my radar about a year ago called Money Machine. It's by a group called 100 Gex. The song's super abrasive, but super catchy. It is psychotic. It's got a happy
I listened
core.
to it, dude. I listened to it. It's awesome.
Yeah, but it sounds like actual damage. You know, it has an overdriven experimental edge, but at its center is an auto-tune hook, and it sounds kind of like a summer anthem, but with an auto-tune hook and stuff, but with light, airy lyrics. But it's hard, just as hard and overdriven as something like, say, Death Grips, but it's strangely happy. It's funny. I remember when that first came out, I remember everybody on Twitter that I followed, and it might have been an age thing, but they were like, what is this shit? Like, everybody really hated it. But in retrospect, I look back on it now and actually think that song's really cool because in retrospect, it's actually, it delivers on the promise of what I imagined music from quote-unquote the future would sound like.
What is the name of that band again?
100 Gex, yeah. And because, from having being younger in rave and being involved in like the dystopian industrial community and industrial music and a lot of the dark thoughts and beliefs that came out of that and like notions about like ideas like cyberpunk and stuff like that. Futurism is deeply ingrained in electronic music in general, be it dystopian or utopian. And we always assumed that it would be something like really deconstructed, like Aphex Twin or something. But 100 Gex sounds closest to what, like my kids, if I had kids, would probably be annoying me with right now.
Dude, okay, I'm gonna test this out tomorrow.
It's ironically happy.
Eugene, do you know Uniform or The Body?
No,
the Body sounds familiar.
No, what you're describing to me sounds like what I think of when those bands. It's kind of like, the shrieking at the end of the world, just because you've come to the realization that all those bad things that you're thinking are actually true. So,
that's horrifying.
That's what Uniform and The Body sound like to me.
That sounds fantastic.
I gotta tell you, the way that Eugene described 100 Gex, I was like, have you heard Juice WRLD? I think Juice WRLD is sort of similar, though sadder, of what you were saying about 100 Gex, like that SoundCloud, like pop, emo, goth crap.
That's funny because the newer generation of trap is a lot like that. Like, have you guys heard Gucci Gang? There's a lot of ironic happiness in a lot of the newer trap where they're kind of post Purple Drank. You know what I mean? Like everybody's getting like past their like the Vicodin hangovers basically, and it's just kind of there's this weird buzzy happy sound. But
yeah, I think they're straight edge, dude.
Right? Like, I don't know that they're straight edge, but I don't know that getting crazy fucked up is like a cool thing anymore. Like
No, it isn't.
It's kind of like people go out to have a good time and they're like, oh, if I'm not having a good time, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go find somewhere else because they have so many options now. Kids, man.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Like we are so dystopian because we're like, there's nothing to do. And these kids are like, oh, I'm going to drop an album on SoundCloud right now.
Right, and I'm going to record the vocals on my iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, so do you know bands that do that, Eugene? That record their vocals on their iPhone?
Well, I do, because I mentioned Gucci Gang. It was like a big hit, I think, like a year and a half ago. But the hit Gucci Gang, Gucci Gang, Gucci Gang, that guy recorded that on his iPhone. And it's funny, Jeremy and I, the guy I write music with, we picked up the video for it. And the video looked suspiciously like that same kind of fake irony that Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana had. There was like kind of like a high school setting and like a fake pep rally, and it was weird.
It was like Heathers, man.
Somebody exactly, and it was like the same. Like there was like some cognitive dissonance between the people who made the video and the people who made the song, and none of them like listened to each other's work. So I went like just clicking around looking for where the trap storyline basically like went.
Hey, can I call a pause right here and just say what is trap? Like I'm an old man in the suburbs. Oh. I've heard the term trap. I don't know what the hell that means.
Technically, trap stands for techno rap, and it's like a post-90s term. But I think that there's people that'll fight you on that now. Like it's like they'll say that technically isn't what that means, but it's.
Dude, people will fight you for anything right now.
The right way to spell donut or ketchup. Absolutely.
But isn't there a very specific like beat per minute and a very specific like type of like drum sound that you're getting from trap?
There is. They're basically like it's composited from the old 808 sounds, but it's basically like 16th notes and then triplets on the hi-hat. And then like 1-2 on the kick and snare. So basically what it is like slowed down electro. But then like modern trap actually like guts that even more. And so modern trap will like do cool things like take out a lot of the drums altogether. And because there was a backlash like about 2 years ago, people were getting sick of like what they called trap hats, like because that was a cliche. Yeah. You know, like you'll hear in like TV show themes now, like this trap song will come in and you'll hear 16th or 8th notes and then triplets and then like then some snare rolls. That's trap. That's the trap cliche basically. Also, there's cliches to things like SoundCloud rap. There's like you sound like the mumbling, like the mumble rap thing.
Mumblecore.
But those are all cliches basically that are they're basically all like tropes that operate within the culture. But so occasionally you find a group though that fights against those tropes or does something completely different.
So can you like imply the beat and do ambient, like ambient sound and then imply the beat kind of thing?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of really great modern hip hop groups that do that. Actually, there's a New York based hip hop group called Ka, and that would be just Ka. The guy basically takes kind of the Wu-Tang riff, like Kung Fu movie, kind of B-movie mythology. He had an entire album that was all essentially like weird samurai hip-hop mythology. But his beats were basically like he would take out the kick and the snare entirely. And it's really haunting. It's some of the most beautiful hip-hop of that type. But a lot of times he'll cut in like traditional instruments, but a lot of times it'll just be, like you were saying, like a cappella. It'll just be like a couple like gestural hand impacts, basically to designate the 1, 2, 3, 4, but just to make sure that he keeps on for the verse. But a lot of times his tempo will be pretty much arrhythmic, and a lot of times it'll just degenerate into spoken word. It's really gorgeous stuff. But I don't even know if you'd call that trap. But that's just really, really good hip hop that came out a little more than 5 years ago.
Yeah, I was just organically, because of the way you were just describing that, I was going to say, how does Burial fit into all of this?
Oh, you know what? I actually don't know Burial.
Okay.
Burial. No, Burial. Burial. Burial.
Yeah.
Oh, I actually don't know.
Oh, it's so funny because my sister's the one who got me into this. Okay, Nelson, what do you know about Burial?
He's kind of like, what, 2006, 8, 7, 10?
Sure,
I don't know.
Exactly, exactly.
All the years blur together when you have little kids, and that was when I was in the thick of it.
No, but you're right. You're about right.
He's like this mysterious guy. He was, and I don't know the terminology, so it was kind of like breezy, almost similar to the way trip hop has that kind of. It does have the hi-hat, in contrast to what you were just talking about, Eugene. and it's kind of like it feels like you're walking on an urban street at night, and then you would hear almost a soulful singer being like, and I don't know, for whatever reason, the words you were using to describe it, what you were describing probably sounds nothing like that, but that's how translation between people's thoughts in their head go.
I'll have to check that out. That sounds really fascinating what you're describing, though.
I feel like if Banksy was music, it would be that.
Wow,
I don't know why.
That's
Well, okay. Actually, check this out.
Banksy would be more punk rock than what I'm describing.
Eugene, before when you were saying that it was like electro to some degree, I was like, you know what? Electro was such a short-lived phenomenon in a lot of ways. Like, or it peaked for like, I don't know, 3 parties I went to. Like, I just felt electro could have been so big. Like, the best electro was like the best music, but was it such a small category that you couldn't have that much good versions of it?
Electro's weird because I feel like electro lives permanently in an ironic state. Because, I mean, if you think about, like, the first big tracks that came from it were, like, appropriations of Kraftwerk. So, like Planet Rock was essentially Kraftwerk with, like other tracks layered on top of it. But, like, basically, it started out as a form of krautrock or like art music, basically, and wasn't thought of as music for quote-unquote discos. But so it was ironically repurposed and probably retempoed and to create like a form of what they would call breakbeat music. But so it lives, basically its inception is already in a state of irony. And that's why you get in trap, you get these sort of third wave states of irony for the style. Because, it's the 808. The 808 can only do so many patterns.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
It has a roll, but just 30-second note rolls. But yeah, so that brings me to something else that I ran into, I think by this point about a year and a half ago as well. Ghostmane, yeah. It's like, there's like a silent E in there.
It's one word?
Ghostmane. Yeah. And it's basically, to describe it in a phrase, it's occult, goth, emo, trap. And I hated it when I first heard it. I thought it was the stupidest thing I ever heard in my life. Like, it's one guy, and he writes songs that are derived from occult terminologies and occult topics. He has songs like about John Dee, the alchemist, and like a quote-unquote Mercury in retrograde. But over time, I started to listen to more of it, and I realized that what was going on here was more like a B-movie sense of humor, kind of, which puts it more in a category of like Misfits, which is another
you were indoctrinated
B-movie, like horror band. Yeah, but I started seeing it from like basically like it didn't take itself as seriously as when I first stepped up to it, and I realized it was actually pretty cool and interesting. And actually, from a stylistic perspective, it descends from like mid-20s a genre in the mid-20s called Witch House, in groups like Salem and Dalek, and I don't have any proof that Ghostmane knows who Salem is. Might be too young. It's really neat stuff, and it's basically horror movie music, and it's just absolutely different than what normal trap serves up in terms of its cultural leavings.
Skinny Puppy was horror movie music to me. Remember, like Rabies, half of that album.
Oh, absolutely.
There was sampling satanic rituals. We used to play that at our parties to try to get people to leave, but the problem was there were enough people that liked that stuff that they would come out, so then it would be like Party Part 2, because now we had all the, the fun people.
Usually it was our way of signaling we were out of beer, or they're very closely correlated, the music and the out of beer. But people either have stashes or a little more, or they're not drinking, or they're drunk enough, and they're still there, and then we'd have Jeff Chivari dance parties.
Jesus, yeah.
Jeff Chivari was like the most straight edge, coolest.
He was literally an altar boy.
Literally an altar boy.
Oh, he's
so
actually
awesome.
an altar boy.
No, like, best person ever. But, like, his college memories are the Jeff Chivari dance parties. I hope he's not, like, a politician or a pastor. Sorry, Jeff Chivari dance parties. All right. So anything else you've been listening to lately?
Yeah, actually. And I mentioned this earlier, but this is basically part of my growing old gracefully or becoming boring. I've started listening to a lot of soundtrack music because a couple weeks ago, I heard this really cool song that had a broken groove and this really beautiful, resonant, melodic bass line. And the song, as I learned, was called All This I Do for Glory. It was by a producer named Colin Stetson. And I started listening to more of this guy's music, and I was digging it because there was like a really weird sound that he had for his bass lines, and I wasn't sure what was happening. And then I wiki read all about him, and I realized that this guy isn't like a normal electronic music producer. He's a soundtrack artist, and he wrote the music for the horror film Hereditary, which was fantastic. And he also wrote the music for the game Red Dead Redemption and a whole bunch of other games that I have and recognize. And so what I realized was that a lot of the people who are part of your cultural multimedia landscape don't have faces or names. But when they come at you writing music in a vein that you recognize, like they hit you really hard because they understand how to tell a story really effectively. And I learned that the reason why his bass lines sounded weird is because he's actually a bass clarinetist. And I think that was a convoluted bass clarinet tone. And yeah, so basically, like lately, all I've been listening to around the way of electronic music have been variations on this riff, because a lot of the really good composers also do work for film. And like I mentioned, Colin Stetson did a lot of work for video games, and a lot of like he did like an H.P. Lovecraft movie that Nicolas Cage was in recently.
Color Out of Space.
And he did a lot of stuff. But so then there's this other composer named that one. Yeah,
I was so pissed that they took the U out, man.
Yeah, they de-anglicized
it. They
it.
renamed it.
Americanized it. But yeah, so there's this other artist that...
Wait, hold on, one thing first. Sorry. Quickly.
Go ahead.
How are you finding like this music? Like what platform do you use? What do you search? How do you find it? What are you reading? Like, how do you find this kind of music?
So I'm doing like I'm on like mailing lists for different record labels. That's how I found out about Michael Levy. Colin Stetson, I just found he was just a rando from Spotify. It's gotcha. Spotify's tangents, basically, cool. The way it goes, you might like this, like that kind of thing. Is oftentimes either insulting or eerily correct.
Sure. Well, yeah. No, it's adjacent friends. You share 80% with this friend, here's 20% of what they listen to.
Yeah, and every now and again, it's like, check out this band, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, or whatever. And
well, yeah. well, to be fair, you haven't listened to them, I bet, at all. So, like, it's a new band to your profile.
Yeah. So anyway, one day I was subscribed to this record label mailing list. I can't remember what it was, but I got a notification for this album that was coming out, and it was Michael Levy, who's a composer, with Oliver Coates, who's another composer, and the album is called Remain Calm. It's cello and dark minimal electronics. It's really beautiful stuff. And then so I clicked through Michael Levy on Spotify and realized that so two of my favorite movie soundtracks are Jackie, which is the Jackie Onassis movie, and Under the Skin. And I haven't seen either of those movies. This is Michael Levy. But yeah, it's beautiful minimal string work with like mild electronics and just a really excellent control of mood. The way an electronic musician gets older is basically listening to music that's increasingly more and more reductive and digested and in complete control of its emotions.
And then ultimately you get to that, what's the length of that song? The 43-minute or whatever the song is, it's total silence. That's the end game. Right?
Oh, yeah, right.
4:33.
Is that what it is? 4:33?
I believe so.
Yeah.
John Cage, 4:33. Yeah, it's complete silence for. That's the end.
No, actually,
no. Wait, hold on. It's not complete silence because the crowd is making noises. The environment around you is making noises. People are breathing and coughing. No, it's the awareness of that space. That's the pieces. It's not silence.
Actually, I mean, I might get there eventually, but I did see William Basinski last year play in a church, and William Basinski does record 43-minute songs based on things like the planets. And it's basically like a laser show, like a stoner laser show, but it was freaking amazing. But entirely music based on the planets, and he's in his like late 70s, and he talks to the audience at the end. That would be ambient music. But yeah, so I think you make a stop there, and then you turn 50, and then you start listening to silence.
I'm enjoying the silence more and more as I age.
Seriously.
So many problems could just be resolved by being quiet.
Oh, yeah.
So Eugene, there's this band I've been listening to, you know, because I come from the metal world a little bit, and these guys have kind of popped up as Black Midi.
So I would call them basically deconstructed post-punk. It's fun music, but it reminds me a lot of groups like the Jesus Lizard. I don't know if you remember them from the 90s, but
yeah.
I kind of feel like they're derived of that whole production tradition stemming from Steve Albini. So like that type of band. And I don't even know what that type of band is called, like the Albini-esque band. But Black Midi is definitely cut of that same cloth.
Are they from Chicago? Because if they are, that's so funny. That's all.
They're not from Chicago, but one of the bands from Chicago that I've been listening to that's kind of similar to that is they used to be called Disappears, and now their lineup has switched a bit, and now they're Facs, F-A-C-S. They're that Chicago scene, and they kind of follow that very minimalist, reduced sound, repetitive. Anyway, they covered David Bowie Low in its entirety for like one set, so that gives you a perspective of where they're coming from.
Wait, this has come before, and I need someone to help me with this. It's probably Eugene. Why was David Bowie? So we're talking about his Berlin years, right? So this is when it's East-West Berlin. It's what, like 72 through 75 or thereabouts. Like, what's going on? What's going on?
I think he moved to Berlin to kick his drug habit. Like, he didn't know anybody there. He was like trying to come clean. And, you know, as you're kicking drugs, this is probably the sounds that you're hearing in your head. I don't know. I've never done it, but I could imagine.
I think Peter Murphy moved to Turkey to quit heroin. People do things like that, so that makes a lot of sense.
Wait, just to be clear, he moved closer to its supply, like right next door, to get further away? No, he moved there for tax purposes and to live like a king. Yeah,
he
that's a great
converted to
story.
Islam after moving to Turkey, apparently.
Eugene, thank you once again for coming back to the show. I think you're the first person that we've had on a second time. I could be wrong, but awesome hearing from you yet again.
Yeah, thank you for all this new music. Sounds so good. Check out Eugene's latest works on SoundCloud, which is at... How do I find your latest works, Eugene? H.A. Eugene?
I publish
or
music.
All your works?
Yeah. So I publish music under the name Autobono. That's like Autobahn, but with Bono. Just go into your Spotify and pump in Autobono, Autobono. And also, too, you can find the label I'm associated with is Budget Cuts Music. It's really just me and my buddy Jeremy. But we post all of the new music that comes out from our various sub-projects there. So that's how you can keep in touch.
Awesome. Thanks,
Excellent.
Eugene, for joining us.
It was my pleasure.
I love all the bands I heard about. I'm excited. I'm going to go listen to more new music. This is why I started this podcast with Steve, because there's so much like music I didn't hear, and I wanted to hear more of it, and you gave us a bunch of good stuff. So thank you so much. Yeah, we'll see you next week on the New Dad Rock. No, not you, Eugene. No. Otherwise, you're going to start asking for shares. Sorry.
That's how he ended up coming back. We said, we'll see you next week on the New Dad Rock, and he came back. I couldn't believe it.
Magically returned.